I'm going to kick off the whole thing, and I'm going to ask Matthew to pray.
What's this on? Did you lose your razor?
You know, I'm trying out a new look, seeing how many ways I can be good looking.
Is that your mask for the week?
High now. Okay.
Not as early as we could be here, so we thank y'all for being here. We'll get kicked off as we did last time. We're going to hopefully rapidly go through each section and move on to the next section without waiting for the publicized time to start, but we're just going to do that. And first thing, I'd like to ask Representative Matthew Gamble if he would open us in prayer.
Thank you, Chairman. Let's pray. Lord, we thank you for today, God. We thank you for the rain, and pray that you would just be with us during this time, be with us during this day. God, give us insight and wisdom. Lead us in the decisions that we have to make. Protect our families as we're away. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Chairman Gullett, I'll turn it over to you. Please.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning. All right, we'll start on Section 5, Appeals Court, 5.1.7, increased funds to annualized judicial judge salary expenses. This is a two-time bump, one beginning July 1st and one beginning January 1st. 6.4.5, increasing funds for judicial security initiatives. That's something that we've lowered from $340,000 to $108,600. That's as part of HB 199 carried by Vice Chairman Kelly. 6.4.6, increased funds for targeted recruitment and retention initiatives. That's something we lowered a little bit just because retention is pretty good over there and we have some really dire needs elsewhere. 6.5.2, outside legal fees. We kept that the same. I just want to call out there's a number of lawsuits related to the JQC. For $50,000, 6.5.2, increased funds for outside legal fees. Again, we didn't change that, but there are a number of lawsuits there, and I think they'll have to be adjusted here soon. 6.6, this is Prosecuting Attorneys Qualifications Commission. This is something that was under PAC before and has been brought under Judicial Council. That's for $1,125,000. 6.7.2, increased funds to annualize the salary enhancement for Judicial Council's judicial compensation reform. That's something that was brought to us at $29,871. We've moved it to $50,478 for two salary increases coming up, one beginning July 1st and one beginning January 1st. That's all for Judicial Council. Juvenile courts, there's really no changes there, just minimal things. We'll do Section 8, Prosecuting Attorneys. 8.1.4, provide funds for one conflict case investigator. That was something that was $191,000, $191,289. We haven't seen a sufficient caseload to justify that at the time. 8.1.5, we've stricken that. That was provide funds for one conflict case prosecutor at $289,021. Again, not a sufficient caseload at this time. We have a revised number for 8.3.4. That was $201,409. We've lowered it to $201,340. That was given to us by the PAC. 8.3.7, increased funds for 1 year revised pay scale. That's something that we're going to look at into the future. So we've stricken that, $1,754,395. 8.3.8, provide funds for 4 district attorney positions. This is something that we added in the amended budget, but was taken out when we actually passed it. So we've added 2 of those positions back for a total of $451,781. We just want to call out 8.3.10. This is just new judgeship positions and something that we're funding half of, and those judgeships, these ADAs, because those judges start January 1st, and we provided half at $269,620. 8.4.6, provide funds for Deputy General Counsel. That was $261,452. It's something that we have passed on at this time for $0. 8.4.7, provide funds for 1 victim advocate. That's something that was $60,469, and we'll address that into the future. So it's $0. And then you'll see the 8.5, really specifically 8.5.2. This is where Prosecuting Attorneys Qualifications Commission was under PAC and has now been moved to Judicial Council. That's all for prosecuting attorneys. Superior Courts, you'll notice 9.3.5, 9.3.6, and 9.3.7. Those are new judgeships for Alapaha, Augusta, and the Douglas circuits, provided at half at $225,847. And then 9.3.9, Judicial Salary Restructuring Plan. And this is something that we have increasing beginning on January 1st, I believe. So that's $14,465,177. That's all for Superior Courts. Supreme Court, wanted to call out 10.1.7. This is increased funds for the pay increase. This is moved from $668,437 to $611,168. This is a 2-time bump, one beginning July 1st, and then the follow-up beginning January 1st. Public Defender Council, I want to call out 37.2.4. This was increased funds for a juvenile conflict division manager position. It was at $226,517. We've stricken that, something we also struck out during the amended budget. And then you'll notice 37.2.8 are for the 3 assistant public defender positions for those new court circuits we mentioned earlier. That was $211,169. And that's all we have. Do we have a motion?
Move to pass.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Thank you. Motion passes. Subcommittee Judicial is adjourned.
Call to order the General Government Subcommittee Appropriations. Roll through this quickly. Department Audits Accounts, page 1, section 4, 4.1.1, 4.1.2, 4.2.1, 4.2.2, 4.4.1, 4.4.2. All statewide changes that have to enter for the department audits due to the agency being legislative branch agency. 4.1.3, 4.2.3, 4.4.3, These are all requests for salary adjustments submitted by the agency that were included in the governor's recommendations. They have asked for us to disregard these, to focus them on the operational and position needs, and this request saves the state approximately $200,000. 4.1.4, we recommend funds for 3 data analytics positions and 3 quality standards positions. 4.1.5, 4.2.4, 4.4.4, the Department of Audit asked that the funding be added to address rising vendor expenses. State Accounting Office, Department of Banking and Finance, Department of Administrative Services, no changes. Going to page 5, section 12.12, Georgia Technology Authority, 12.12.1, we asked the GTA to utilize existing funds from the TEF fund to help Department of Labor with maintaining their legacy UI system as they transition to a new system. 12.12.2, this is just language needed to ensure federal compliance. Department of Banking and Finance, Department of Driver Services, Office of Governor, no changes. Officer and Commissioner Insurance, page 11, section 29. 29.5.3, we made an adjustment to the state funds in the reinsurance program. Page 13, section 32, Department of Labor, 32.1, 32.1.3, 32.1.4, 32.1.5. We provide funds for 5 positions, operating expenses, and staff training. After the passing of Commissioner Bruce Thompson, y'all, the agency has been run by really hard-working public servants. Acting Commissioner Louis DeBrow and CFO Kate Furman have been doing a lot of work trying to keep that department day-to-day operations operational. This will help them out a lot. Department of Natural Resources, page 14, section 34, 34.4.2. This is a trigger that reduces the amount of money we're putting towards outdoor stewardship program by 20%. This is a legislative matter. If it drops 1%, I've mentioned to the subcommittee multiple times, I think this is something we may need to look at. So we're actually suggesting merely decreasing it to 5%, not 20%. You'll see that on 34.4.2. 39.9.3, 39.9.4, recommending the $200,000 being added to the deer processing, and $250 to help DNR handle the spread of chronic waste disease in the deer population. State Properties Commission, no changes. Department of Revenue, page 17, section 42, 42.5.1, made an adjustment to the local tax officials retirement program based on projected expenditures. Secretary of State's office, no changes. Georgia Access to Medical Cannabis Commission, page 20, section 43.7.4, recommending funds for merit-based salary adjustments for the commission. State Board of Workers' Compensation, no changes. Do I hear a motion? So moved. I hear a second. All in favor say aye. All opposed, like sign. Meeting adjourned.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. We'll call this meeting to order. Members of the subcommittee, if you will follow along, we will move quickly. We'll start in section 24, 24.1.3 through 24.1.9. This is our Ag Ed ads. We'll start with a number of items here. On number 24.1.3, we are not reducing those funds. 24.1.4, we're annualizing the salary increase that was given. As you will see, this will impact about 600 staff for a total of $94,000. 24.1.5, this is a $100,000 add for 84 employees to impact the per member per month rate on the health insurance increase. 24.1.6, $110,000 to fund 10 new ag ed programs, which we do each year. 24.1.7 to add $100,000 for a young farmer position in Bibb County. And then 24.1.8 and .9 are adding program-specific staff for a total of about $400,000 there. If you'll turn over to 24.3.4 to add $500,000 for our STEM software via gamification program. 24.5.2, $250,000 to increase our support for communities and schools, which I think this committee has been very diligent and very focused on supporting over the past. I do want to draw your attention to 24.6.4. This is a $2.5 million add to fund those PSAT and AP exams that we have paid for. We've seen tremendous growth in this, as well as very high demand in these two tests, and so this is something that we're going to focus on funding in the base moving forward. But we're talking about quite a few exams. If you'll flip over to 24.7 in curriculum development, you're going to see that we're going to make a number of transfers here in just a few minutes throughout this document as they relate to literacy and where we're putting those items. So when I reference a number of transfers out, you will see them transferring in a few minutes. 24.9.4, this is a formula true-up. 24.12, the Literacy Coach Initiative. So this is the first place where you'll see dollars there from a literacy standpoint. This continues our focus on those RESA-based literacy coaches in our K-5 system. This is adding 116 coaches, or bring that total to 116 coaches for that $18.5 million that you'll see there. 24.3.7 is a formula true-up. 24.13.8. This continues, Chairman Dickey, our focus on character education programming that we've seen great success across the state with. 24.13.9 is a formula true-up. 24.13.10, again, this is a transfer as it relates to Universal Reading Screener, which you'll see coming back in just a few minutes. 24.13.11, this is a $150,000 add for our feminine hygiene grants due to our inflation and increased enrollments in those economically disadvantaged, for those economically disadvantaged students in grades 5 through 12. Last year we passed Senate Bill 464, which called for a $15 million infusion of cash to provide stipends, a $100 supply amount stipend to each teacher. So we're funding $7.5 million, our half there. 24.14.3, continued focus of this House and this committee as school nutrition. We're simply adding hold harmless language there to continue and maintain the current funding. We know that while the number of students needing those meals may have gone down, if anybody has bought eggs lately or anything else for that matter, you know the rising cost of meals has offset that. 24.16.2, we have a new federal bus driver training requirement and mandate, and this is the first year cost. Here, if y'all see the $158,000 to pay for that for about 20,000 users across the state, that cost will be cut in half next year. We'll move quickly through a whole bunch of formula true-ups. Here we go. 24.17.1, 24.18.1, 24.19.2, 24.19.3, 24.19.4, all formula true-ups where you see different amounts. We'll continue with 24.20.3. And then 24.22.2, our school nurses, this is that same calculation and comment that I made just a minute ago about school nutrition. We have a hold harmless language there. even though there is a decline in elementary school enrollment. 24.23.2, we're adding $150,000. This is an agency request to fund a position to oversee all of those school safety dollars, those safety grants, that $109 million that's in the budget, plus the infusion that the governor provided of an additional $50 million. That person who was overseeing that funding was paid through a federal grant. And since that grant's ending, we want to make sure we have a dedicated person who can oversee a whole lot of dollars to make sure they go where they're supposed to. 24.23.3, this is a $25 million add to focus on school safety. These are the startup funds for the first year of the database, ongoing funds for the BTAM teams. We've all voted on that bill, and we know where those priorities are. 24.24.1, this is a $715,000 adjustment based on the governor's recommendation. This is going back to House Bill 318 that was about charter school commission compliance last year. But specifically, these new positions are to provide support to schools that are trying to become locally approved charter schools. 24.25.4 is a formula true-up. You'll go with me to 24.26 and our student support services. These are some pretty major investments that we as a committee and we as a house are making here to further support our students. The first $20 million add targets $20,000 per middle and per high school for 979 schools across the state to provide them with a mental health provider, whether that's through telehealth, hiring in-school staff, really concentrating on continuing our focus on mental health. 24.26.2 to provide an additional $5 million for social workers. This is to target those 75 schools that have no form of social worker so that we can put someone there, give them access, give those students access to much needed resources. 24.26.3, this is our, if any of you are familiar with the concept of BOOST and the BOOST program and the reference to BOOST 2.0, this is a $10 million add to continue to support our out of school and after school, as I would say, initiatives. And then lastly, in that same section, 24.26.4, $28 million add to create a poverty weight inside our QBE formula. We can talk offline about who is eligible and how that can be calculated. 24.27.1 is a formula true-up. If you've been around the last couple of years, 24.27.6 will make a lot of sense to you, where we've worked on those heavy equipment simulators. We've seen great success across the state. Side note, if y'all haven't been in one of those heavy equipment simulators, please contact me. Let me show you how to get in touch with those guys and go sit in one of those simulators and see what we're teaching high school kids how to do. It's pretty amazing. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. If you've never moved dirt and filled up a dump truck, this is something you need to partake in for sure. Very happy to support that. 24.27.7 is just annualizing that raise. We have a new, as Floor Leader Gamble knows and has been a great advocate for, our Georgia Center for Civic Engagement. They finally became a career and tech student organization, and so on 24.27.8 program I'm very proud to support. And they oversee our youth assembly, if anybody's been here for that. So we're adding $100,000 to that. We will flip over to, almost done, 25.4.2 in ERS. We're simply adding $23 million to what's already in the base for a total of $50 million so that we can add and increase our one-time payment to our retirees. And let's wrap up with our literacy initiatives. I guess we've got one quick item before we get there. 27.10.3, y'all, our PSC and our ethics investigators are handling 20,000 cases a year. They've gone the last 9 years without having additional headcount staff, but that workload has increased 210%, so we're adding 2 full-time investigators for the 222,000 you see there. Another literacy transfer there, but lastly, if you'll pull over to 27.14 in GOSA, you will see where we begin to add more dollars here for literacy, for our coaches, for our universal reading screener. If y'all see on 2714.3, this coincidentally, you know, we did the blind, as I call it, the blind tasting of the screeners that were available, and this is the one that was chosen. It's actually the lowest cost screener, so great to know that it's the best and the lowest cost. 27.14.14, $250,000 ad for that literacy coach coordinator position. And then we really want, in 27.14.5, want to supplement what we're doing from a literacy standpoint with those competency-based, research-based facts and figures. And so you will see that there. That's all I have. Are there any questions from the committee? Hearing none, what's the will of the committee? We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign? Thank you. We stand adjourned.
Good morning. We'll call this meeting on the Appropriations Committee, Subcommittee on Higher Education to order. Good morning. We will go on and get started in Section 41, USG Board of Regents. If we start on Section 41.1 under Agricultural Experiment Station, if you go down to 41.1.4, that's funds for two new staff or faculty and one staff, $450,000 to add to a Georgia Research Alliance eminent scholar that we've recruited on sustainable bioeconomy and research. Going down to 41.1.5 is $450,000 for extension specialists and technicians in several areas: peach, citrus, blueberry, turf grass, and soybeans and corn. On down under cooperative extension service, 41.3. If you go to 41.3.5, you'll see increased funds for a North Georgia hay and forage extension specialist. That's $150,000. Under 41.4, Enterprise Innovation Institute, that is $250,000 to increase funds for Workforce Innovation Initiative. Going down to the Georgia Research Alliance, which is that recruiting of eminent scholars and researchers, 41.9. 41.9.4 is increased funds for research grant. That's an additional $2 million increase. On over to the Georgia Tech Research Institute in 41.10.3. It's increased funds for research on post-harvest technology supporting the peanut industry. That's additional $350,000 and a very crucial part of Georgia's economy. On over to Public Service Special Funding, 41.15.4, $375,000 in one-time funds for a planning grant. That's studying a development of a School of Civil Thought and Leadership at the University System of Georgia, $375,000. 41.15.5, reduced funds for summer programming. That's a $2.5 million decrease due to decreased utilization and effectiveness. 41.15.6 was a reassignment of $3 million that was to go to 2 law schools. 41.15.7 is a reduction of $700,000. That's due to delayed program implementation there. 41.15.8, that's just a transfer of the $1.6 million in funding for the Center for Rural Prosperity and Innovation from under the university system over to the Department of Ag. 41.15.9 is an additional $600,000 that allows the Georgia Tech Computer Science program to extend into 10 additional counties across Georgia. 41.15.10 is increased funds of $100,000 to the Georgia Youth Science and Technology Centers. 41.15.11 is funds for the dental clinic, a long time at the Ben Massell Dental Clinic, $577,000. That's used also to teach a lot of our Dental College of Georgia students, which we are now about to expand into a Savannah campus as well. Under 41.17.5, Skidaway Institute of Oceanography, there's a $326,000 increase to reduce some of the austerity reductions that are still left over there at the Skidaway Institute on the state side from COVID reductions. Additionally, some dock electrical and other work is $193,000 at 41.17.6. Under teaching, 41.18.6, increased funds for Georgia Capital History publication of $125,000. And we'll go on over to section 44 under Student Finance Commission of Georgia. You'll see under 44.3.1 an estimate for the correct amount needed to increase funds for projected need. That's $17 million, $436,000. Under 44.5, there's a foster care scholarship pursuant to Senate Bill 85 that I believe is in the House Higher Education Committee. That doesn't have a dollar amount, but it's contingent on us looking to do additional help for former foster students. If you go on down to the 44.7, there is a reduction of $50,000 in that program. They currently have over $1 million in reserve, so they can fund it, some changes based on their reserves. Over at 44.10 under Hope Scholarships for private schools, this is kind of related to 44.10 and 44.11, private and public. That's an effort to move $10,147,000 to make the Zell, the Hope Private Scholarship Award to match the Zell Award in public. So that's just a move of $10.147 million. Down at 44.13, that's just a new program of memorial grants. It was originally the Public Safety Memorial Grant section, but now that we're adding or potentially adding an HB 56 Public School Employee Memorial Grant, that's a new program area, so it just moves over $540,000 and has kind of a placeholder for that Public School Employee Memorial Grant. 44.16 is the other side of that $540,000 move. Under 44.18, the Promise Scholarship, there was a maximum amount by legislation of $141 million based on looking at other states and the uptake in the first year. Typically, it's around 1%. Just to be safe, we estimated a 2% uptake of all the eligible students under the current formula, and that would be a $45 million need rather than the $141 million. So that's the new amount is $45,646,000 there. Down at 44.21, that's a request to increase the tuition equalization grant from $1,100 to $1,150. They currently have over $5 million in reserves, so that it's believed that they can fund that out of their current reserves. And I believe there's under technical college system, I don't believe we have any new additions or changes. I'd answer any questions from the subcommittee. If not, is there a motion?
Make a motion.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign? All right, we'll adjourn this Committee on Higher Education subcommittee.
Good morning, and I'm going to call this meeting to order for the Subcommittee on Transportation Appropriations. And I'm just going to highlight the changes to the governor's recommendation, starting with section 47.1.3. And this is an increase to funds for airport aid. This will be the first time in 3 years that the base funding for airports will have been increased. And just for some perspective, we're still spending 10 times less than our neighbors in Florida, and we have the same number of airports. I'm going to bring you down to section 47.11. The rail program lost $4.8 million in revenue due to the sales tax, fuel tax suspension, and the House would like to make them whole by zeroing that out. And let's see. Section 47.15, there's no recommendation to the change in funding, but we are asking the Atlanta Regional Transit Link to provide a report to us just due to the fact that ridership has drastically reduced since the pandemic and has not returned to pre-pandemic levels. So we just would like to understand better how those dollars are being spent and hear their thoughts on how they can make that transit program the most effective, cost-effective, and meaningful for the riders that are using it. But there's a lot of empty seats on those buses now. That is it, and I'll entertain a motion. All right, we have a motion, and we have a second. All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, we will be adjourned. Thank you. Stephen?
Good morning again. I'll call to order the meeting of the Human Resources Subcommittee. We will start with behavioral health and developmental disabilities in section 15. 15.1.1 will replace state general funds with other funds for the hepatitis C screening program. This is called Imagine Hope. They've done an incredible job over the years. They've had about 90,000 hepatitis C screenings and 950 cures since 2016. 15.1.2 will increase the funds for alcohol use disorder peer support. This is new funding of $1 million to support the program at Northeast Georgia Medical Center in Gainesville, Brazelton, and Winder. This will expand into Habersham, Lumpkin, Dublin, and other rural southern areas. 15.3.8 under adult developmental disabilities. The now comp waivers. This will be 150 slots. Wish it was more. We always do. We will continue to work on that. So there was additional money added to help that. 15.3.9 to increase the funds for citizens advocacy to expand their services. This is an opportunity of $100,000 to help them use matchmaking services, which help people move out of nursing homes into better care. They will hire 6 matchmakers. The next is under adult forensic services, 15.4.5 to provide funds for a jail diversion project. This is a partnership with NAMI and McIntosh Trail CSB for jail diversion pilot in Henry County, similar to assisted outpatient treatment. This is $185,420. Next, under adult mental health services, 15.5.7, to increase the funds to address some of the homelessness challenges that are particularly prevalent in Atlanta. This is new money, $300,000 to Mercy Care to help fund the expanding services that they do every year. 15.5.8, also new money, to increase funds for homelessness community action items, $750,000 for Partners for a Home. This will fund one team, which will address about 75 people delivering intensive services 3 times a week with a social worker, a nurse, a psychiatrist, and peer specialist to those who are homeless but also dealing with persistent mental illness. The next is at 15.5.9. This is for the Georgia Housing Voucher Program, $1.7 million. This will fund about 100 vouchers. This is an ongoing challenge as it is a huge part of our DOJ settlement agreement. 15.5.10 will increase the funds for a North Fulton Behavioral Health Crisis Center. In the amended budget, we put in $500,000 for the planning and design, and this is right under $1 million. It's about $9.4 million to begin the next steps of this process. Next, under Child and Adolescent Developmental Disabilities, 15.7.1. These are for 2 autism centers that do great work in our state. $100,000 for Matthew Reardon in Savannah area. This will be year-round school for about 35 children with autism to help them with some of their hiring and special education teachers. And then $500,000 for Marcus Autism Center. They also have a year-long program which has a huge waiting list, so this will help them to reduce that. Next, under Child and Adolescent Mental Health Services, 15.9.2 to increase funds for psychiatric residential facility discharge planning. Hillside in Atlanta needed more coordinators to help them for the next step and make sure that there's a smooth transition post-discharge. They only have one, and this will help them. Next, under Human Services Department, Section 28. 28.2.3 will increase and expand services for at-risk girls, going $150,000 going to PACE Center for Girls. It serves girls 7 to 18 years old in Macon, Bibb, and Peach counties, providing individual and group therapy substance use for prevention. This will help them expand their services into other locations. Under Child Support Services, 28.3.3, this will also increase funds for a child support help in an area for our DAs in DeKalb County who are helping with support for out-of-state non-custodial parents. This will continue to help them meet the needs there at $191,000. Next, under 28.4.4, the House is going to support maintaining funds for wraparound services. This is a fairly new program called Unite Us. It is a referral system through DFACS and CHINS. The staff can use it to connect family with local services and prevent child welfare involvement. And that prevention tool is so important, I think, as we move forward to address the welfare needs in our state. Last year, I'll just tell you a little bit about this. This past year, I believe since November, they had almost 4,000 interactions with clients, and it's expected to reach 6,500 in the first year. This is a strong prevention program. 28.4.5 will increase funds for a heavy equipment operator certification program for high-risk youth at Broken Shackles, $125,000. Under Elder Community Living Services, 28.8.3 to provide funds for non-medical home and community-based support services. This will fund about 400 slots, a little over $1 million, and help the Council on Aging address vital services to keep seniors in their homes, such as meals, home care, transportation. Next, at 28.10.5, under Federal Eligibility Benefit Services, this will increase the funds to annualize a $3,000 additional salary enhancement to our eligibility caseworkers. In 25, we funded child welfare, child support, and elder protection caseworkers. So this is an addition to that at $5.7 million. 28.10.6. The department is going to be directed, this is language in our budget, not dollars, to prepare and submit a plan to address the backlog of eligibility determinations to the Office of Planning and Budget and the chairs of the House and Senate Appropriations Committee by June 1, 2025, to help us understand and address the 70,000 determinations that are part of a backlog. Under 28.11, out-of-home care, 28.11.2, increase funds for utilization growth for the increased cost of care in the foster care programs. This is million, I'm sorry. It's early, girls, y'all know that, ladies. 19 million's here helping me. Okay, 28.11.3, increase the funds for essential clothing supplies for foster youth. I'm so excited about these two programs because they really are addressing some of the things that our state cannot actually do. Bloom Closet, which is in several places in our state, and their Bloom Mobile as well, which delivers opportunities for school supplies and clothes for children. And then also Kids Cup in 2000, each in Dublin. Each will be getting $200,000. 28.11.4, to increase the funds for foster youth to help keep them closer to their biological families. A very worthy goal. This is a new program, $500,000 for families for families. This will be a $10 a day per child to allow opening foster homes annually and to help them keep the staff on board, but also it has been found that children who are placed near home exit about 102 days earlier than those who are far away. This is a great new opportunity for us. 28.11.5 will provide funds for a 2% provider rate increase for our child caring institutions, child placing agencies, foster parents, and relative caregivers. This is a little over $6 million. 28.11.6. This will increase the funds for community action teams to deter child welfare involvement. There are contracts that we have. This one is with Youth Village's Intercept program, which works with kids 0 to 17 years to de-escalate very difficult situations. The next is at 28.11.7 to increase funds to support youth aging out of foster care. Youth Villages also has a Life Set program and serves about 40 children, young adults actually, to help them move into independent living. It costs us about $50 per person a day, and this is a $325,000 ad. Out-of-school care services at 28.12.1 will reduce the funds and recognize $10 million in the Department of Education Student Support Services for out-of-care programs. This is after school and in the summertime particularly. Remaining contracts with a Hoopie Regional Library, which is in Vidalia, and also with the United Way of Greater Atlanta and Washington Street Services, which are in Covington. 28.17.1 will increase the funds for personnel for the salary and fringe for one administrative position for the Council on Aging. Right now they have one person, and the population is growing, and they need a little more help. Two items here. I'm going to start with 28.23.3. We will be transferring funds from that to 28.20.4. So this is not an ad, but a movement of funds for vocational rehabilitation to the department administration to align with the work they can actually do. It will help them be able to utilize employees that they have in a much better way. $28.23.4 will increase the funds to supply new and usable durable medical equipment and assistive technology to our disabled adults and children. This is a program called FODAC. They are in over 100 counties right now, and we'll be building a warehouse in Griffin, which will serve as a satellite distribution center for all of this equipment. And last, in Veteran Services, Section 48, 48.2.1. To increase the fund, this is movement also. We will move this from 48.2.1 to 48.3.1. The funding, it's a cleanup from OPB. The money will move into the Georgia War Veterans Nursing Homes area, increase their funding there of about $63,000. 48.3.3, this is the work with the U.S. Department of Veteran Services to identify ways the Milledgeville Subacute Therapy Unit could be used to best serve Georgia veterans. This will provide, this is language mostly, but it will, yes, that's it. That is the cleanup of the unit. 48.3.4 will actually increase the funds to address the rising cost of health care in our war veterans' homes. This is $1.5 million. The VA provides a 50% match for homes, but the state has not increased our match in 10 years, so this will help them greatly. 48.3.5 will increase funds for 40 additional beds to submit a plan to reach the maximum occupancy to the Office of Planning and Budget, the House Budget Research Office, and the Senate Budget and Evaluation Office by September 1. This is an add of $2.1 million. Currently, the homes are at 54% occupancy with 262 beds. This would bring us back up to 62%, and the VA recommends 90%. So we're working on that challenge right there. And that is all that we have in Human Resources. If there are any questions, I will hear them. If not, I will entertain a motion. We have a motion to pass. We have a second. Any discussion? Not all in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed by like sign. The measure carries.
Thank you, thank you.
Good morning. This is the Health Subcommittee on Appropriations. We are going to be going over the changes in this meeting. We're going to start with the Department of Community Health. The first item you will see is line 17.1.7. The House is directing the department to conduct a comprehensive study of all Medicaid provider reimbursement rates. Next is the Georgia Board of Dentistry, lines 17.2.3 through 17.2.6. The House is adding 4 new positions: protective equipment, retention funds, and funds for training and software. In the Georgia Board of Pharmacy, lines 17.3.3 and 17.3.4, the House added 3 positions and retention funds. In the Healthcare Access Improvement, the House added $200,000 in one-time funding for Southern Regional Medical Center, $500,000 for 2 FQHC startup projects, and $561,500 for care and resource coordination and support for patients with sickle cell disease. In lines 17.4.7, the House included $500,000 for telecare and maternal health programs. Line 17.4.8 is one-time funds to establish a regional vascular center in Emmanuel County for $407,000. Line 17.4.9 is matching funds for behavioral and mental health service stabilization and augmentation for $3.5 million. 17.4.10 is $100,000 for the Georgia Rural Health Association to support the advancement of access to rural health care. Line 17.4.11 provides one-time funding to expand and sustain labor and delivery services in rural Georgia with necessary infrastructure in order to provide quality care, $5 million. Throughout the Medicare programs, the House updated funds based on new projections from the department. The House also added approximately $32 million in state funds for reimbursement rate increases for providers across the state. The increases include $8 million for emergency medical service transports, both ground and air, as well as to services provided. $1.9 million for speech therapist, $1.9 million for neonologist and maternal fetal medicine specialist, $6.3 million for applied behavioral analysts, $7.5 million for primary care physicians, $3.1 million for dental increases, $1.7 million for durable medical equipment, and $1.5 million for heart and lung transplants. Line 17.10.1, the House provides $3.1 million for 6 additional months of funding for dispensing fees for independent pharmacists serving those in SHPB. Additionally, in line 17.10.4, the House provided another $1.2 million for drugs dispensed to be reimbursed in the amount equal to the national average drug acquisition cost. In the Georgia Board of Health Care workforce, the House added $100,000 for a grant writer. Lines 17.12.4, graduate medical education, the House increased funding for 150 new residency slots across the state for $2,884,552. Lines 17.12.5, $319,654 included for 4 child and adolescent psychiatric fellowships and 2 gastroenterologist fellowships. Line 17.12.6 is the 3rd year of funding for the Maternal Fetal Medicine Fellowship at MCG. Line 17.12.7 is the establishment of a graduate medical education grant program to support new and expanding residency programs statewide with $5 million additional. Line 17.16.2 allows the board to utilize existing funds for equipment and operating grants for nursing programs, prioritizing those with wait lists and additional student capacity. Moving to the Composite Medical Board, lines 17.17.4 is $75,562 for a paralegal. Lines 17.17.5 and 17.17.6 include funding for 4 new positions. 17.17.7 is funding for a physician health program for $750,000. 17.17.8 is funding $750,000 related to the passage of House Bill 455 last session. Next is the Department of Public Health. Lines 38.1.3 increase funds by $50,000 for feminine hygiene products for low-income clients at community organizations. Lines 38.1.4 increases funds for an Alzheimer's and related dementia registry, $297,500. Line 38.4.3 is $1.2 million for the Office of Cardiac Care to distribute grants to hospitals who are working to achieve a higher level of cardiac care. Lines 38.4.4 instructs the department to study the needs of regional emergency transportation and report the findings to all 3 budget offices by September 1st, 2025. Lines 38.4.5 eliminates funds for the Georgia Coordinating Council. Line 38.7.6 provides funds to support quality improvement at birthing facilities and additional funding to increase the number of birthing facilities with verified maternal and neonatal levels of care, $700,000. Lines 38.7.7 provides funds for the retention and recruitment of Babies Can't Wait service coordinators and special instructors, $1,101,790. Lines 38.8.2 provides funds for a 2-year pilot program to study the impact of Duchenne's muscular dystrophy on the newborn screening panel, $843,772. 38.8.4 provides $250,000 for Reach Out and Read Georgia to provide children and with books during a well visit appointment. Lastly, lines 38.9.2 provides $250,000 to implement the recommendations from the state viral hepatitis plan. That concludes the changes. Are there any questions? Do I hear a motion? Is there a second? All those in favor? Those against? The motion passes. Thank you.
All right, good morning. We'll call to order the Economic Development Subcommittee of the Appropriations Bill. Follow along with me, started in Section 13, Department of Agriculture. Pursuant to House Bill 495, carried by Chairman Robert Dickey, we're transferring funds from both Economic Development and USG totaling $2.392 million to the Center for Rural Prosperity, which we moved to the Department of Agriculture pursuant House Bill 495. Continuing on, 13.3.4, we're increasing funding for licensed inspectors, licensed coordinator, administrative assistant inspector, and others for the Department of Agriculture for the hemp program, totaling $792,585. On down in 13.3.5, we're providing funding for emergency management specialist position for the Department of Ag, $125,000. Additionally, 13.3.6, providing funds for the high path avian influenza and emergency response at $450,000. And lastly, in the Department of Agriculture at 13.3.7, providing additional funding in $188,839 for 2 additional meat inspection supervisors. Continuing on to 13.4.3, $250,000 for Helping Hands to End Hunger. That concludes the Department of Agriculture. On to the Department of Community Affairs in 16.1.1, $2 million for to increase funding for Accountable Housing Initiative, $2 million. Down to the Housing Initiative in 16.11.4, providing one-time funds to the State Housing Trust Fund, $4 million. As many of you know, that we leverage $10.52 for every $1 that's invested by the state, and that comes from the Fed, so we're investing $4 million there. Down in 16.11.5, we're increasing funds for special housing assistance programs to address increased demands there at $500,000. Continuing on to Department of Economic Development, 23.1.3, transferring funds from TCSG to support the Georgia Joint Defense Commission at $120,000. On down to 23.5.2, recognizing funds for the project manager and the rural site development position at $636,700. continuing on in Department of Economic Development to 23.8.2, transferring funds for one project manager and rural site development position to Global Commerce Program at $636,700. And again, in 23.8.3, transferring remaining funds to the Center for Rural Prosperity to the Department of Agriculture pursuant House Bill 495 at $761,293. On down to tourism, 23.10.3, providing one-time funds for the Martin Luther King Jr. Center for Nonviolent Change for Social Education Exhibits and Marketing, $250,000. Again, in 23.10.4, providing funds to Georgia World Congress Center to prepare, or the authority, to prepare for the execution of public safety and infrastructure costs related to major sporting events coming up, $7 million. And then just for, so that you know, in 23.10.5, we're just encouraging the Department of Economic Development to engage stakeholders that may have interest in bringing those world leaders, businessmen to our state. On to Georgia Forestry Commission, 26.1.3, we're increasing grants to counties of more than 20,000 acres of state-owned land pursuant to OCGA 48.14.1. McIntosh County is $641,748. Again, it just they provided an updated invoice for that community, and we're providing the funding there. 26.2.2 under forest management, we're increasing funds for a new Georgia-grown wood product program of $200,000. Down in 26.3.2, increasing funds to in aiding and combating wildfires, $1.6 million. As many of you know, that's to cover some delayed reimbursements from FEMA, and we've also had an uptick in wildfires across our state. Down to Georgia Public Service Commission, 40.1.3, $30,000 to hire an attorney for a FERC-related case, given the loss of a previous staff member. 40.2.3, $102,573 to ensure compliance with federal audits, including funding for shortfalls for the pipeline safety inspector. 40.3.3, provide funds for targeted salary for recruitment and retention, $250,000. Again, the commission is losing long-time employees to others in the industry. Committee members, that is the economic development section of the appropriations bill. Any questions? Do I hear a motion?
I move.
Second. Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thank you. We are adjourned.
Okay, I'd like to call this meeting of the Subcommittee on Public Safety Appropriations order. And first thing on the, first let me say this, we're way behind and I take the longest of anybody, so it's going to be just the facts, ma'am, today. So,
We got plenty of time.
okay, he says we got plenty of time. Starting off in Section 18, Community Supervision, 18.2.4, increased funds for personal services to reflect increased retention of community service supervision officers. 4.8 million of this is vacant positions that have been held open to use for operational costs. And there's 4.7 additional million that they've used 53 sworn staff salaries for operational costs. And moving on to our largest category, the Department of Corrections. Throughout the Department of Corrections and DJJ, there are 4% and 8% pay raise COLAs. They have a difficult time with both hiring and retention. So I'm going to go, they're universal, and I'm going to go through all of them together at one time. There's a 4% increase for education, chaplains, food service, and maintenance positions, which comes to $2,331,515. 6-month in-grade promotion and compression for correctional officers. What's happened in corrections, the people on the bottom have been getting pay raises, the supervisors have not. There's a $500 difference per year in the supervisors versus the correctional officers, and now nobody wants to take a promotion for $500 and take on an additional responsibility. That comes to $9,637,825. There's a 4% increase for all correctional officers, which is $13,438, and 8% increase for behavioral health counselors. We tried to hire them at 4%. We couldn't get them 8%. We've had better luck. That's $5,080,099. Adding 700 additional correctional officer positions, improve staff to offender ratios. Ours is 14 to 1, 11 to 1 is the standard. That's $9,059,814. Now on to section 19.1.7, increase fund for existing operational needs, $1,911,000. 19.1.8, increase fund for administrative costs for the opening of the McRae's Women Facility, $917,170. Increase fund for administrative costs for the opening of the Smith Transition Center, an additional dormitory which is supposed to open this summer, $84,921. Skipping over to 19.211, increase funds to add correctional officer position to improve staff to offender ratios. This is the same thing I just talked about in a different section. $4,417,000. 19.2.12, increase funds for utility costs. This is deficit targeting, $388,043. Moving down to food and farm operations, increase funds for food and farm operations, $3,948,490. This is just to meet the food costs for the Department of Corrections. 19.3.6, increase foods for food costs related to the opening of Smith Transitional Center, McRae Women's Facility, and a TIF cafeteria contract for basic correctional officer training cadets, $1,177,000. This also is deficit targeting. Under 19.4.5, increase funds for the dental health contract and to support increased population, $6,997,000. Increase funds for the mental health contract to support increased population, $22,211,000. 70% of the people incarcerated in our prison system have mental health issues. 19.4.8, increase fund for physical health contract in support of increased population, $20,390,000. 19.4.9, increase funds for retention of experienced correctional officers to address compression, $3,626. 19.4.10, increase fund for healthcare contract for McRae Women's Facility to account for additional full-time physical health employees, $998,000. Down to offender management, 19.5.5, increase funds for a $6 per diem increase for county correctional institutions. The state pays $75 a day for per diem. We pay the county correctional institute $24 now. $6 will make it $30. They utilize them for a lot of, you see the people cutting the grass along the roads and that kind of thing. Many of them are saying that if we don't increase the funding, they're going to give them back to the state. We have no place to put them. Under private prisons, 19.6.2, increase funds to add 180 private prison beds at Coffee Correctional Institution and 258 private prison beds at Wheeler Correctional Institution. $10,342,000. 19.6.3, provide funds for a contractual increase for per diem rates at Coffee, Wheeler, Jenkins, and Riverbend Correctional Institutions to account for increased consumer price index costs, $13,647,000. 19.6.6, increased funds provide a cost of living adjustment for employees at Coffee, Wheeler, Jenkins, and Riverbend Correctional Institution, which is consistent with the 4% raise that the state employees are getting. 19.7, state prisons, 19.7. 13, increased fund for ongoing support of body cameras and tasers for increased facility security, $3,584,000. 19.7.19, provide funds to continue opening the digital forensic unit through a contract, $4,114,000. We're annualizing that. 19.7.20, increased funds for personal services for the Overwatch and logistics unit and outgoing technology fees, $3,805,000. 19.7.21, provide funds for the annual operating costs of the Data Intelligence Advanced Integration System, $1,950,000. 19.7.22, increase funds to transfer eligible inmates into federal custody, $474,000. 19.8, transition centers, increase funds for the opening of 100 additional beds at the Smith Transitional Center, $2,708,000. 19.8.11, increase funds for utility costs, $29,043. 19.8.12, there's no money involved here, but Department of Corrections is directed to identify and facilitate the purchase of property for additional transition centers in the Albany and Savannah regions. We have over 1,000 inmates that are eligible to go to the transition center, and we're having to maintain them in the state prisons at a much higher cost. Section 20, Department of Defense, nothing. 27, Office of the Governor, nothing. 30, Georgia Bureau of Investigation. 30.1.3, increased fund for a new pool car reservation system, $19,290. It's a new contract. 30.1.4, increased funds to reflect an adjustment to statewide security contracts to Department of Administrative Services, $57,018. Under 30.3, forensic scientific services. 30.3.4, increased funds for 2 crime lab assistant managers at the headquarters crime lab, $389,000. They have a 41,000 case backlog, and 37,000 of them in the chemistry section. This will assist in getting all of it cleared up, but particularly in the chemistry section. 30.3.6, reduced fund for one-time costs related to the medical examiner's office positions in fiscal year 2025. So we take back $28,270. 30.4.8, reduced fund for one-time costs for the Columbus Gang Task Force positions. We're going to recoup $2,146,000. 30.4.9, increased funds for advanced DNA testing and genetic genealogy testing for the cold case unit, $200,000. 30.4.10, increased fund for 8 criminal intelligence analysts for the Georgia Information Sharing and Analysis Center, $1,619,000. Under section 30.5, which is Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, increased funds to offset the loss of VOCA funds to provide core services for victims of crime, $8,125,000. 30.5.5, increased funds to implement the Georgia Motor Vehicle Crime Prevention Program pursuant to House Bill 268 in the 2023 session, $750,000. 30.5.6, increased funds for operational expenses, $33,558. 30.6, Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, Council of Accountability Court Judges. 30.6.2, increased funds for new and existing accountability courts to support population growth, $1,344,000. 30.6.3, provide funds to implement juvenile treatment courts per House Bill 873 in the 24 session, and implement 1 training coordinator position for juvenile treatment courts per House Bill 873 2024 session, $155,000. 30.6.4, increased fund for new and existing juvenile treatment courts, $153,000. Moving over to DJJ, or juvenile justice, 31.1.6, provide funds for a 2% provider rate increase for child caring institutions, child placing agencies, foster parents, and relative caregivers. These are the people that take care of children, foster people and foster homes and some of the child care facilities around the state, so they get a 2% increase. It costs $351,000. Department of Law, we don't have anything. Pardon the paroles, we don't have anything. Public Safety. 30.1.3 in the aviation section, increased fund for 2 aviation mechanic positions. They have 13 helicopters and 3 mechanics, and aircraft are sitting unused because they can't keep up the maintenance. Section 39.9.2, Georgia Peace Officer Standards and Training, increased funds for the purchase of a cloud storage solution, $37,000. The old system went down. It took over a week to get it back working. 39.9.3, increased funding for the Chiefs of Police and Georgia Sheriff's Association for the state mandated training that they have to attend, $819,000. Georgia Public Safety Training Center, reduced funds for rent at the Pickens Academy location. The rent got so high there, they had to close down. We left them half of the money to put their stuff in storage, and we recouped $7,500. 39.10.7, reduced funds for one-time costs for the expansion of basic mandate, $681,000 that we recouped. 39.10.8, increased funds for the North Central Georgia Law Enforcement Academy, $150,000. Office of Highway Safety, replace federal funds with state funds for the personal services cost of 3 employees. We said no to that. That concludes the presentation. Do I hear a motion? Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We're adjourned.
Well, good morning. I think we have a quorum, and many of you have been here through the entire presentation from all the subcommittees. As y'all know, we're doing a lot of good things, a lot of expenses in certain places. I just wanted to, before I did my official comments and presented the bill, I wanted to thank all of those involved in this process, all of those in the House Budget and Research Office that have put in. Y'all just don't know the hours they put in, especially last week, with getting this done, plus crossover and all the committee meetings, because we have people that work, our people in the budget office work committees and the budget. So before we even do anything, I want to thank Christine Murdoch, all her staff, for all the hard work they put in the last few weeks. And I'm going to turn it over to the vice chairman, who's upset that something's not in the budget. So maybe he'll call for the vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we'll allow a vote this morning, though. But I want to thank you, and let's give Chairman Hatchett a round of applause for his hard work. And I'll now turn it over to you, Mr. Chairman, to present House Bill 68.
Thank you. 2 months ago, the Commissioner of the Department of Corrections stood before all of us at this podium to present the Governor's amended FY25 and FY26 budget recommendations for his department. That day was unprecedented for 2 reasons. First, the recommendations were released in advance of session. And second, it was an historic infusion of cash that was being recommended for the prison system. The advanced recommendations and cash infusion highlighted the sense of urgency shared between both the executive and legislative branches and our need for swift action to address the pervasive problems within the prison system. Your Appropriations Public Safety Subcommittee, led by Chairman Hitchens and supported by Courtney George, has spent the last 2 months combing through the Governor's recommendations for the department. Just last week, we passed an amended budget that included an infusion of $345 million in new funding for the department. Much of the money appropriated was for staff, but it also included funding for some terms we'd never heard before, like tiger teams, maximum security modular units. Those budget adds were all designed to enhance staffing and increase bed capacity so that much needed repairs can begin that will make our prisons safer for both inmates and for our officers. The FY26 budget you have before you now builds upon those recommendations, recognizing that agency needs are fluid and ever-changing as new information becomes available. The House version of the budget adds an additional $125 million on top of the Governor's recommendation for a total increase in next year's budget for the Corrections Department of $250 million. Much of the funding in the Corrections FY26 budget is an annualization of the needs we recognized in the amended budget, included lowering staffing ratios and improving bed capacity so that the department can implement life safety and security projects. This budget also recognizes that salary enhancements are working to attract and retain staff in the prison system, and it includes additional salary increases to keep the staffing momentum going. It also addresses deficits in the corrections budget, where funding for vacant positions has long been used to cover gaps in increased operational costs, including utilities and health services. Now that the department is having more success at retaining staff, these expenses must be accounted for and made whole in the base budget. Finally, this budget includes $38 million in additional funding for private prisons and correctional institutions, recognizing that these entities are an essential part of the correctional network. Without them, we would not have bed capacity for all of our offenders. While this theme of the budget so far has been public safety, this is also very much an education budget. The House supports the governor's recommendation for enrollment growth and fully funds the QBE formula, but we also include $98 million in additional education spending above the governor's recommendation, primarily for student safety and mental health. The House budget includes a $25 million investment in new school safety initiatives designed to assess and prevent school threats. It also includes more than $60 million for a new program that I'm really excited about called Student Support Services. This new program is a collection of ideas and requests many of you are likely familiar with that support our students in ways that the QBE formula can't. This new program provides $20 million for mental health grants for social workers to do outreach, for mental health grant funding for middle schools and high schools. $5 million for grants for social workers to do outreach and address chronic absenteeism. $10 million for out-of-school care and programming, or Boost 2.0, as some of you may know it. And finally, $28 million to implement a new source of funding for disadvantaged students, otherwise known as a poverty weight. Together, these programs aim to support the whole child with needed services outside of the classroom to improve mental health and boost academic achievement. Finally, literacy has been a major focus of concern for members in this body as well as in the Senate. That's why the House has included an additional $10 million in funding to implement recommendations from the Georgia Council on Literacy, including funding for 116 RESA-based literacy coaches to support teachers on the science of reading. Of course, in a $37 billion budget, there are numerous adds in other policy areas that I know many of you will agree are equally important. And this budget addresses those needs. To include a few, $8 million to CJCC to offset the loss of VOCA dollars, $6.4 million for a 2% provider rate increase for child caring institutions, child placing agencies, foster parents, and relative caregivers, $3.4 million for 150 new NOW comp waivers, $32 million in reimbursement rate increases for providers treating patients on Medicaid, $8.3 million in new funding for graduate medical education, including $2.8 million for 150 new residency slots and $5 million to establish a grant program to support new and expanding residency programs, and $23.5 million to provide an enhanced supplement to our state retirees. This is just a few of the highlights that you can be proud of in the House Committee substitute on HB 68, and I would appreciate your favorable consideration. And I will attempt to answer any questions.
Do any members have any questions? All right, seeing none, what's the will of the committee? Sir. All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you again, Mr. Chairman.
Thank y'all.
Bill moves to rules. And this meeting is adjourned.